Manchester United 1, Newcastle United 0. Guys, first of all, please forgive the background. Right now I'm doing some dog sitting. Actually will be for the next couple of videos. So if you hear a pitter-patter or there's a jump cut in this video, let's hope that's the reason why. This will be a pretty short video today. I just want to focus on a couple big things here, but it all starts with this. Tempo. Now, let's be honest, Manchester United have a pretty terrible track record under Ruben Amorim of controlling the tempo. And what I mean by this is pretty simple. When Sonny Lemons gets the ball, or one of our deepest center backs gets the ball, it used to be 9 times out of 10, you just pump the ball into the middle and see what happens kind of thing. But guys, today, they were actually, deciding whether or not they want to play it into the middle, whether or not they want to play it backwards or sideways. We weren't just forcing stuff into the middle and hoping to get that second chance. And you might be thinking to yourself, prove an example of when we did this. Look at the second goal against Bournemouth. I think it's Luke Shaw gets on the ball over on the left side, and because we only have one way of playing, which is route one into the middle, he just pumps the ball forward. It gets nicked off of whoever's playing up top, and then within 3 passes, Bournemouth are in on goal. Guys, it's so easy and predictable for any knowledgeable, cognizant manager to realize a typical Manchester United team is only going to play this style of football. Now, today, they opted for something different. As I mentioned, Lamans and the whole entire team really did a good job of knowing this is when we push it forward. This is when we decide, no, let's maintain a little bit of possession. And most of this was in the first half. So I think that's a really key part. And I think probably the consensus is that the best game United played this season was against Brighton when United won 4-2. I look at these two results pretty similarly. I know one had a lot of goals, the other one only had one, but United did a good job in both those matches, controlling the tempo, controlling how they wanted the game to be played, which was just so strong. And another thing I want to mention here real quick, the ability to link up play. Now, I don't think Benjamin Sesko has been a complete head of the club. All right, I simply don't, and I think it'd be hard for you to really make a reason on why. But what he did today extremely well was he dropped in and he linked up play. So I speak so much about how Manchester United's forward line, they're pretty uncreative and they make the same kind of Hail Mary runs forward no matter what. Today they were actually playing reactionary football, as well I like to call it. If Sesko had a good angle to his left, they would focus their runs over to the left. If he had a good angle to his right, they would do the same thing. And I think you really see this between Patrick Dorgu and Matheus Cunha. They link up really well on a really nice 1-2 just outside the Newcastle box towards the end of the first half after Dorgu scored his spectacular goal. And while Cunha ended up shanking a shot, guys, it was so nice to see. And a couple minutes later, Dorgu had a really nice run inside where he was just maintaining the run that Sesko, I think, who was on the ball, wanted him to make. A forward run, but, it had a purpose to it. So many of United's attacks this season have been made without purpose. But today, they had one, and it just made me really happy to see that. Let's talk about the second half, guys. And let's also talk about another thing real quick, a little niche thing. I don't know if anybody else really noticed this, but I was kind of wondering some of the pressing structure from United. Now, today, I personally noticed a massive drop-off on the pressing, and I was actually okay with it because I actually think in the past, United were way too fragile. And I know on the occasion they would poke the ball away. You think of the Villa goal. Dorgu pokes it away, gives it to Cunha. But I think more times than not, they got beaten when they tried to press. Today, they kind of dropped off, except in certain circumstances, kind of down the middle. And there's a certain thing I'm thinking of certain example is Manuel Ugarte, for some reason, at some point, decently into the first half, I think, just pushes straight on to Nick Pope. Like it's a dead ball situation. So it's clearly supposed to happen. But Pope just pushes straight on. Ugarte pushes straight on to Pope. And then he just drops straight back. The second ball is played. I wanted to pay attention to this. And I noticed in the second half, the Fletcher boy, I forgot which one it was, who came on today, did the same exact thing. They were kind of marking the Ramsey. And so I don't know if this was a possessional thing, anyone who played in that pocket, if this was a man-marking thing on Ramsey, whatever it was, I think it's something worth noting. It just felt so weird because United weren't really pressing. They weren't really on the front foot in that kind of way. So to see Ugarte or in the second half Fletcher just move up and down the pitch, consistently marking this spot of the field, it kind of threw me off. But moving to the second half, guys, I mentioned controlling the tempo, and you might think to yourself, well, that's really a tale of two halves. I don't really think so. Yes, I know Newcastle had probably 75% possession, and I know they were heavy on the air quotation marks here, creating chances, but all it really was just hopeful balls into the box, passes that were carved out. They never once really challenged Sonny Lamans. And I guess if you're an extremely diehard Newcastle fan, you could sit there and say we deserved a point today because of how we dominated the second half. But it was just such a dull knife on the attack. No matter who they had out there, they made so many changes. They did so good through 2/3 of their final attack. Just that last ball inside, that last shot, the last everything, it was so off of it. And it's okay if it happens a couple times, but guys, this was the whole entire second half. Newcastle missing out on the final pass, the final shot, the final ball. Literally every single attacking instance. It just felt like a butter knife in the attack, guys. It really did. So I wasn't too concerned throughout a majority of that second half. Of course, towards the last 6 or 7 minutes, you're always going to be a little bit antsy, but for a majority of that match, especially of the second half, I felt in control. And guys, that's all I've asked for Ruben Amorim. It's just help me feel in control. Help the team feel in control. Quickly, if you want to talk about the 4 at the back, I think it plays a large part in playing that kind of controlled style of football. I think when we built up, there were a number of times when we had to pass back, and it felt like, you could maybe feel a little bit of a groan from United fans. Why are they passing back again? It's typically happened when they're building up through the left side. Why are they building back? Why are they building up the left and pushing it right back down to the goalkeeper? And I get that. And this team isn't perfect. This team is nowhere near it. I'm interested to see how long they keep up this style of football where they're playing reactionary, which, like I mentioned before, is actually a good thing. But today's a big step forward because today was without Bruno Fernandes. And you look at that bench, guys, and we're talking about the U18 Manchester United's U18 teams out there, and that's not really a note to be disrespectful. A lot of those kids are around the age of 18, so it was a big step forward. You're missing Bruno Fernandes, and typically what you see with Bruno out there, guys, is just the long balls being pumped into the middle, and then you see what happens. But, today they looked, I'm not going to say they didn't look like that they didn't need him, or they looked like they didn't need him, but it was okay. They were pretty comfortable throughout that match. Now, please, Bruno, if by some chance this lands on your YouTube Discover page, I need you. But I wasn't as scared as I was expecting to be. And I think part of that is also on Newcastle, guys. I think United had a 3.5, debatably 4-star performance. But I think Newcastle, this is probably the worst I've ever seen Newcastle. Because if if you've seen Eddie Howe play and you see the style of football, the rampage, the dominant midfield, all these things, everything that United isn't over these past couple of years is what Newcastle is. A brutal midfield, a fast-flying attack, a structured defense. They're one of my favorite teams to watch in this league. They didn't look like that. They looked like a bit better of a relegation team. And, I think that United got relatively lucky in terms of the name that they played today. Because a couple weeks ago when I was measuring out and I said United have to get 20 points over these next 10 games, we're coming towards the very end of that, by the way, 0% chance I believe that we were going to beat Newcastle. 0% chance. But today they largely had, a decent side. Maybe it was still had a couple injuries, but it was nowhere near, they weren't bringing on the Fletcher kids like United were. But they just played poorly. And I think United did a really good job of taking advantage of it. The exact thing that they did not do against Aston Villa. So, guys, I'm happy today. I really, really am. So, guys, enjoy your Friday. I can't believe it's Friday. Happy holidays, everyone. We play, I think it's Wolves, Leeds, and Burnley, our next 3 games. In that order, in some order. Win, win, win. We have to get 4 wins on the bounce, guys. That guy has to be near to shaving his head. Enjoy your day, hug your family. You see, this type of stuff I say when the Manchester United win, you just don't see it so often. But guys, have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you all soon. God bless.